Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, the NFL Week 14 preview edition. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig. If you're listening to this, you're well aware there are 6 teams on bye this week, which makes waivers tricky. It makes getting a full lineup tricky, especially in Superflex formats. I, for one, am down, Trevor Lawrence and Drake May in the fishbowl, and I didn't have enough coin to get Mac Jones to save me. So I'm still above the cut line in fishbowl, but I think my time is nigh as a result of that. And any other spots where I've got Ravens or Texans or even some of the found money that was the Commanders in draft season makes this week extra tricky.
Yeah, sorry to hear that. You and I are no Nick Whalen, I'm just going to remember in my head canon that he won the fishbowl this year. So he did. I'm going with that.
Look, I mean, in like the smallest print possible, we'll put asterisks after 1 week of the playoffs. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, he won. Good for him. Just an absolute powerhouse wagon of a team. But we've got a fun slate nonetheless, and it's interesting how arguably the best game is tonight. So I mean, we still got plenty to look forward to on Sunday and Monday. Of course, Monday we get the Simpsons broadcast, so if anyone follows me on Twitter or knows me, then I'm gonna be dialed on the Simpsons. But regardless, Thursday Night Football, we've got the Packers and the Lions, this one in Detroit. We've got the Lions as 3-point favorites. We've got the over-under set at 51.5. What are we looking at here?
Well, the Lions, even on a short week, should be able to run their offense pretty much in a full form. It helps that the Packers, without Jair Alexander, just don't have a whole lot going on at corner. So their pass rush has some life, yes, but Detroit's offensive line generally is well prepared, even without Taylor Decker. It's like they seem like they've been doing really well. His absence could matter here, of course, because Decker is very good. DJ Reader is also very good, and he's out for the Lions. So that'll be interesting to see if Reader's absence allows Josh Jacobs or whoever in the Packers backfield to get going a little tiny bit more than we'd otherwise project, because the Lions are, of course, great run defense, might be the best in the league, but part of why they're so great at the run defense is they commit to it, and they have DJ Reader on the field at the same time they have Lim McNeil on the field. Those guys are both nose tackles, basically. They're both 2-gap defensive tackles. So when you have 2 guys capable of lining up over the center, playing in a 4-man front, it's going to give those linebackers a lot of space. So Anzalone, Rodriguez, those are big absences, I guess, but Jack Campbell should be pretty free to run around and pursue. It's just without Reader there, it might be a little easier to get someone on Campbell, a blocker on Campbell. And then the Lions, I'm sure they're going to defend the run well, even in that case, but it'll be a tougher test than they've been subjected to this point. The Packers, I guess, kind of just need some luck, I guess, but they should be able to make a game out of it. I think I'd be a little surprised if the Lions sort of buried them. It seems to me like the Packers will take this one pretty seriously, and LaFleur, I think, is the kind of coach who saves, like Ben Johnson, is the kind of offensive planner who saves some tricks for when things are most serious.
Yeah, this really sets up as a huge game. I mean, the Packers with the win, can make the North interesting all of a sudden, or even more interesting, dare I say. But from the fantasy angle, when it comes to this Packers receiving core, how do you feel about Romeo Doubs being out, and who could possibly step up? Where could those targets be kind of redistributed?
Well, Doubs being out makes it kind of simple from a fantasy perspective. It's just, at this point, Watson, especially Reed, though. Reed is the one who's always locked in my opinion. But Watson is a green light with Dobbs being out. The redundancy, it's not there anymore. Dontavian Wicks, I think it's also not that I'm getting my hopes up that high for him. I think he was kind of overrated going into this year, but he's a solid player, and it's for Wicks investors, it's kind of a now or never kind of thing. If you can't use him here, you probably can't use him at all at any time, or at least you need 2 injuries among the Packers receiver, which seems like asking for a lot. So I'm not going to say that Wicks is going to have a great game or anything, but he's got to be involved. That's why he's an overqualified wide receiver 4 to step up and be a clear top 3 receiver for the Packers. But the Lions secondary looks like it's pretty healthy. I don't know if I missed anyone on IR, but Carlton Davis, Emmanuel Mosley, that's a tough corner group. So at once, the Packers receivers need to step up, but I think as long as the Packers offensive line manages the rush well, Watson can be a problem for corners like these. Carlton Davis, he wants to face the quarterback. He wants to grab the receiver at the line of scrimmage and basically never let go. So when a guy like Davis misses, if a guy like Davis misses a jam on Watson, he's just not catching him. And the Lions, while their corner production has been good this year, while the defense has been good overall, their corner personnel can't really turn and run that much. Amick Robertson, if he's on the field against Reed, that could be a problem for the Lions. So Reed is always, and if I had to call it between Watson and Wicks, I'd say Watson, just because he's got that speed to make the Lions corners turn and run, which is what they do not want to do.
No, exactly. And I do kind of think beyond like the passing game implications there, I think the way that Josh Jacobs has been running and the just kind of sheer amount of injuries to that linebacking group in Detroit, I feel like Jacobs could be like the key to this game almost.
Yeah, Jacobs at this point is just sort of an ongoing necessity for the Packers. So I think you can borderline take it a given that if the Packers are winning, Jacobs is having a good game. It's unlikely that the Packers win with Jacobs doing nothing. I guess the one scenario where it could be otherwise is the defense very obviously selling out to stop Jacobs, thus opening up new things in the passing game. But I don't think that would really be the story here. I think the Lions, they always take run defense very seriously. So if you beat them, it's sort of you sort of just out strength them on the question. And yeah, I think those corners kind of need a little bit of help. So if the Lions do sell out recklessly against Jacobs, there's a pretty good chance they pay for it, both Watson and Reed.
Right. And then rounding it out, we do have a pertinent question from our guy Blurpy. He wants to know, would you take whichever Dallas tight end is starting this week? Obviously, Jake Ferguson dealing with a concussion, but apparently trending up.
I think, looking good at least. So the thing is,
or Kraft.
I'm really high on Kraft. I know he's not used quite the way we want in that he's mostly underneath and therefore yards after the catch dependent, but I do think the Packers got to throw the ball in this game. Maybe there's a tiny bit of a chance between Alexander's absence at corner for the Packers and absences like Reeder, Anzalone, Malcolm Rodriguez for the Lions, that maybe there's a midweek shootout with this game. So I understand the allure of Ferguson, that Cincinnati defense certainly seems a lot more accommodating, but between the injury and not knowing what is ever going on with the Dallas offense, I'm kind of drawn toward Kraft a little bit. But any thoughts, John?
Yeah, I think I like Kraft here. I definitely understand that appeal, and we're getting Brandon Cook's questions as well for the first time since
what year
draft season. Yeah, I know, right? So, I mean, everyone wants a cheap piece of that Dallas offense against the Cincinnati defense that just let Russell Wilson put up 44 on them. I get that, but I think Kraft is more bankable, and I think it is important, sometimes to look at what Vegas is saying, and we're expecting a lot of points in tonight's game, 51.5, even if it goes under, which I kind of expect. I think that number's a lot to ask for on a Thursday night between two divisional teams, but even still, I think that there's a good offensive environment here on both sides. Give me Tucker Kraft instead of kind of specking on this Cowboys tight end group ending up panning out. Let's move on over to Sunday. We got the Dolphins. We got the Jets. The Dolphins 5.5 or 6 point favorites, depending on where you're looking, against the Jets at home. I'm just willing to throw last week out for the Dolphins. I know that game kind of means you can't really take them seriously, like as a fringe playoff contender. But we kind of knew that coming into the season. We also saw the Chiefs game last year. It's like what surprised you about that game? But they're back home. They've been clicking offensively since Tua got back. I'm honestly a little bit surprised that the line's just 5.5.
Fair enough. I guess the concern is just the Jets defense maybe just coming back to life all of a sudden, since they haven't lost enough people for it to make sense exactly like how disappointing they've been this year. Sometimes that stuff can flicker from week to week. I don't know. I guess it's also, in my opinion, fair to be just kind of like an ongoing skeptic of the Dolphins offense. They got good counting stats last week, but not really produced in high leverage situations. So if this is a game where the Jets kind of stay stingy the whole time, also I guess the thing to keep in mind here too is Tua has a really bad history. Every Dolphins offensive player basically has a bad history in the McDaniel era against the Jets. So maybe this game marks a change in that trend. The Bills game, a month ago, that what is an exact same case there. It's like Tua always did really bad against Sean McDermott. And then for some reason, after 3 weeks of struggling and then going on the road to Buffalo, he had his best game against Sean McDermott that he ever has. So I guess there's also a case for Tua in fantasy that we have multiple instances this year of the Dolphins pretty much getting blown out and him still putting up nice numbers. So maybe he can do a similar thing here, but I just don't trust Tua right now, and Tyreek Hill seems pretty significantly limited by the wrist, which if defenses catch on to that and don't, sell out to stop Hill, then you might have the problem where Hill can't, act on the threat and everybody else is also getting more coverage attention than ever. So I'm hopeful for the Dolphins. I like Mike McDaniel. I think, getting Jonnu Smith going is very much part of the solution for them. I think they kind of just need to keep working at it, but I still just don't trust the team at all because they just seem wacky at best. And I don't know. Teron Armstead he's been like a game time decision for like 3 years. So maybe like the offensive line becomes a little bit of a problem, but I just don't trust either of these teams at all.
I was going to say, like, I think you raised great concerns about the Dolphins, but the Jets are just such a disaster.
Fair enough. I really don't mean to sound like I have a side in this because they're both very confusing teams to me.
Extremely. And we don't know what exact form of the Jets are going to show up, but it's hard to expect a good one. I think at this point,
we can assume
even with the divisional game. Yeah,
they had their good 2 quarters left in the year in the first half against the Seahawks, and then they just immediately started, they made up for the lost time, starting, I guess, with that Leonard Williams interception touchdown.
That was special. Of course, the first half from the Jets will go down in the history books, of course, but this season
Mission
otherwise for them, it's unreal. But yeah, not a ton else for me to add here. I mean, I think it's well known at this point that Jonnu Smith has basically, got himself in the inner circle of tight end trust for this season. That's been one of the great kind of surprise developments from an offense that we kind of felt was otherwise, the cast was so well known. But beyond that, that is interesting on the Tyreek Hill issue. I'm hopefully.
John, sorry, I guess we got to say before we go to the next one. If Breece Hall gets shut down, I would hope.
Oh yes.
New listeners might not know, but I would hope anyone who's been listening for a while would know that I am absolutely team Isaiah Davis on that one. I think he's pretty obviously better than Braylon Allen, who I think is a meme, like a more expensive Carson Steele kind of situation. But we don't have a use for memes around here, John. We are all about data.
We're all business all the time. We've never told a joke on here. We've never done verbal memes
24/7. Yeah.
So bear that in mind. And yes, to anyone that has Brees out there, Isaiah Davis, the pivot, go Jackrabbits. Next game, Kirk Cousins makes his triumphant return to Minnesota to face the Vikings. Vikings 5.5 point favorites.
Yeah, I don't know who to blame exactly, but the Falcons suck, or at least they're just not they're not nearly as good as they should be. Not to say that the GM did a good job. The GM did not do a good job building this team, but someone asked in the chat what to do with Kyle Pitts, and I don't know what to tell anyone. I think you're fair to just be out on it if you had enough. Fair enough. I can't tell you why you'd be wrong to do that. I feel like I know, separately that Kyle Pitts clearly should be doing more, and that the fact that he is not, the fact that he is being denied the opportunity to produce in favor of players like Charlie Warner and Ray McLeod. I think these facts are necessarily connected to the fact that the Falcons keep losing and keep looking kind of like crap anytime they have to play somebody who is not the Buccaneers or the Cowboys. So that seems to me like a pretty low bar. If the only two teams that they've produced against are that Tampa Bay defense, which was kind of bad to start with and had a lot of secondary injuries. Maybe even, I can't remember if Cansey or Vea was missing any time in that time range too, but the Tampa Bay defense and then the Dallas defense, when it didn't have Parsons back, quite pertinent to note, they couldn't produce against anybody else all year. Kirk Cousins has produced against no third team other than the Buccaneers and the Cowboys. So if he needs to face a potentially bottom three defense to be viable, I don't really have the faith in Cousins, and especially not Zach Robinson, Morris, whoever it is that is footing the bill on this whole thing. I don't have faith at all of them going against Brian Flores. I think the reality is Kirk Cousins, Zach Robinson, all of them got whooped by Jesse Minter playing with a CFL defense. So I don't think Flores is the cure for what ails the Falcons.
I don't either. I think this is a really tough spot for the Falcons. I think I heard Alan Seslowski talking on a pod earlier this week about how none of Cousins' throws last week were clocked over 40 miles an hour. So he's not getting anything on his passes anymore. So you're talking about moon balls against that secondary.
And they're more like ducks. The moon ball at least is intentionally trajected. The duck is one that just dies in the air and starts to fall like a knuckleball. And I think that's what Kirk Cousins is throwing.
Yeah, so that's no bueno. Obviously, let's see. Any additional thoughts on how the Vikings are going to attack this Falcons defense that played credibly to their by their part last week against the Chargers?
Yeah, the Falcons seem to have a lot of bend and not that much break, but they also don't really seem to make plays. So I think Kevin O'Connell will find a way through it. Generally, if you can't make a play as a defense, if you just need the offense to make mistakes, then I think you're kind of outclassed by an offense like the Vikings, who should be able to cause enough cumulative strain that parts in the Falcons defense that normally just bend break instead, at least eventually.
Well said. Before we get on over to our next game, got a message from our pal Nick Whalen in DraftKings Pick 6.
We're proud to be brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6. So many NFL offerings each week over at Pick 6. Been enjoying playing on the Pick 6 platform each and every week of the NFL season. Think a certain quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards. How about your favorite receiver scoring a touchdown? Check out Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy football and win cash right now with DraftKings. Here's how it works. Just pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. Yards, catches, touchdowns, etc. Lock in those picks and compete against opponents for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code ROTOPICK. That's ROTOPICK. Again, ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. If you're a new Pick 6 customer, play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Just use that code, ROTOPICK. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-89-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick Six not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at picksix.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, and we are on to the next game. Thank you again, DraftKings Pick Six. Let's go Saints Giants. When Nick Whalen and I did the betting pod earlier Thursday, we always talk about it, our stay away game from a betting perspective. This is the one for me. I really had no idea what to make of Saints 3.5 or 4.5 point favorites against the Giants, but I don't know. What are we looking at here, Mario? Especially, I think leading off with the Taysom Hill injury, who could theoretically step up in New Orleans?
I guess Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Is anyone else allowed even at this point? Definitely sucks about Taysom Hill. It seems that's how all of his college seasons ended too. He'd be putting up like 39 fantasy points per game and then snap his leg in half while getting his 35th carry of that game. So this is how it must go apparently. But yeah, other than Valdes-Scantling and Kamara, I really don't know what this offense can do. The Valdes-Scantling thing is ridiculous. He still is not drawing usage, like he's drawn 10 targets in 3 games on 117 snaps or something. So it's not like they're feeding Valdes-Scantling so much that these touchdowns keep happening. It's like they still are doing the thing that every other offense has ever done with Valdes-Scantling, which is like waiting on him. Oh, he's jammed up. Oh, he's not quite going the right way. Can't throw him that time. So they're going like 20 snaps in between targets with him, and then nobody but Kamara to take it that whole time. So yeah, there's going to be incomplete passes. There's going to be ineffective targets to somebody other than Valdes-Scantling and Kamara, but like Cedric Wilson, these are the kinds of names we'd be talking, and even those guys are rotating heavily with like Calvin Austin, who I thought was out of the league for like 2 years before they called him up about a month ago. So it's not worth really chasing. Kamara's locked in. Go ahead with Valdes-Scantling. I guess I can't tell you to bench the guy who's touchdowns in 3 straight games, but probably the Saints just don't do a whole lot in offense, and maybe the Giants don't either, but at least they have names who could hypothetically carry or catch the ball.
So who's at the helm of that Giants offense, though? Is it still going to be Drew Lock?
Yeah, I guess if it's Lock, then the skill position talent remains very theoretical, because certainly the last time Lock played, he would just sort of drop back, not know what he was looking at for a couple seconds, and then start scrambling. So that's the offense, and it's hard to run that offense. I really don't. I can't pick a winner here. There might be a tie. This seems like a good time for one. Not 0-0.
It's the right matchup.
It's like a real scoreagami kind of tie, like I don't know, 18-18 or something.
I think there was like a 3-2 Iowa football game.
Yeah, these guys turn the ball over too much, I bet, to stay that low, but that would be funnier. I mean, whatever is an amusing score is what we should hope for here, because there won't be good optics or like joy to be witnessed or something.
Unlikely. Our guy James does want to know about one guy who may get his profile elevated a little bit, and I think he got asked about earlier as well, and that's Juwan Johnson.
Yeah, sorry. I guess I should mention him. He's a guy who I've kind of forgotten to look at, because he's just been hurt for what feels like about a half decade off and on now. And even now he's got this foot issue, but in this whole time he's been on the Saints, he's been pretty much playing hurt. So if you're looking at Johnson, definitely can't hate him for the target projection. And I do think he's a good route runner. It's just, let's see. If he plays something like 50 snaps, that could help. I just don't know if the Hill injury is enough to make that happen. I see Foster Moreau he's probably going to play through his shoulder thing. Sorry, I'll just say, if a question is like, should they start Juwan Johnson over Kyle Pitts. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The Pitts case, especially because we just don't even know what they're trying to do with that offense. But with Johnson, he's a totally decent player with targets that should be available. It's just there's a lot of risk between his tendency to play injured and get injured in games, as well as the possibility that the Saints just kind of are bad at whatever it is they try to do. But fair enough. Throwing the ball to Johnson would seem to be one of those things they should do, because they can't throw it to Valdez-Scantling more than like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, there's a numbers game. There's a critical mass of the target share when it comes to MVS. Let's get on over to the Panthers Eagles game. Eagles 12.5-point favorites here. How do you weigh out basically the Panthers turning this corner over the last few weeks? They don't have a ton of wins to show for it, obviously, but they've played with a pulse that we hadn't seen really for the first 2 months of the season or so. But now they have to go on the road, and now they have to go against an Eagles team that I think, if they were playing the Lions today, would have a pretty good chance at winning on a neutral field. I mean, the Eagles are playing at a ridiculously high level, and like we mentioned at the top of the show, the Lions a bit more banged up than Philly is. 12.5 points. I mean, is there any way in which like the people that have kind of gotten their way back onto the fantasy radar on the Carolina side can do much of anything in this setup against the Eagles defense?
I don't really see it. I think for the offensive players on the Panthers to produce, it might require garbage time, which some of those guys will be eligible for. There's not that many players that the Panthers are rotating onto the field, especially this late in the year. But I think for the Panthers to make a game of it at all, it would more so require the Eagles kind of sleepwalking into it, which they could do. They might, have the emotional win hangover plus the, hey, these guys suck, pre-hangover. I don't know what you'd call it. They get sick more than the first time because they never stopped in the days in between. I don't know, something like that. But the Eagles, I could imagine kind of failing on offense enough that the Panthers are sort of in it. I just can't really see how the Panthers on their scoreboard could press the issue. It's like they just kind of have to hope the Eagles sort of fail to separate over the course of the game.
And the Eagles are historically slow starters this year. I don't think they had their first quarter points or touchdowns until fairly recently. But the thing is, they always end up getting going, and I think that's going to be the case again this week. I think Barkley's set up for another monster game. AJ Brown, I think, is set up pretty nicely.
Did you notice how much they're running it, John? The Eagles taking off as an offense basically started when they stopped throwing the ball 30 times a game with Hurts. That quite literally just seemed to fix everything. So that's kind of funny.
Yeah, he's throwing it like 20 times a game now, and they're just bludgeoning people with the run game. I guess what does that do to your valuations of guys like Devontae Smith? Should be good to go this week after missing some time with a hamstring, and like Goddard. I don't think there's anyone that in their right mind would bench AJ Brown regardless, but those two guys, it becomes a little bit more of a question now with the way that the Eagles offense is functioning.
Yeah, it usually leaves Goddard in a tough spot. I still would want to start Devontae Smith anytime he's active, just because it's maybe it's a narrow usage path he must kind of walk, but he's probably going to be really efficient, and he'll definitely have his blow up game. So got to leave him active. I think AJ Brown, it does hurt a little too, but of course, definitely not benching him. It's just, Hurts throwing 38 times a game or whatever they were trying to do last year. And even in the first month of this year, more targets for Brown and Smith. And we know they're going to convert targets on some sort of league leading basis. It's just, it's a near certainty physical fact that if the sample's more than just kind of like a few drives, it starts to take that sort of shape. So it's frustrating, I guess, but it's bad for the fantasy value of all of Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Goddard, that the Eagles are throwing more 20, 25 times a game the past 2 months. But it's good for the Eagles because it's bad for the defenses that they face. So I think the Eagles have found their ideal their ideal approach, and I don't know why they would deviate at this point.
I don't either. And like the defense is playing well enough for them to like kind of get off to these slow starts, and it doesn't really matter. So yeah, it's going to be a tough road to hoe. I think for our pals in Carolina. Jimbo Fisher using his buyout money to ask us a super chat question. So Jimbo, hello. With Mike Evans apparently having a 30% chance to play, would you go with Sam Laporta tonight or Cade Otton, kind of playing the odds there and assuming that Evans will be out or limited?
Oh, God. I don't know what to make of the Evans thing, but not practicing yesterday or today. And if you must make the call now on Laporta, I think I'd go Laporta. It sounds like your team must be pretty good if that's, the kind of flex call you got to make. But I wouldn't want Laporta on the bench this week. And if Evans sits out and I tell you not to start Laporta, I'd probably feel dumb. So out of fear of that scenario specifically, I'll say Laporta.
I think so too. And, touchdowns aren't sticky week to week, but it, for how frustrating Laporta was early on in the season relative to what you invested in him, it's been better of late, obviously. And I think that, he can make it worth your while this evening against the Packers. So that's the way I would roll as well, regardless of Evans's status, or even considering Evans's status potentially impacting that of Cade Otton's. Do have one more interesting flex question before we get on to our next game. Jonnu Smith, Khalil Shakir, or Bucky Irving?
Sorry, just a second.
Yeah, because we rarely get a flex question that spans the full gamut, right? Of three different positions. I would say, to know.
Oh, sorry, John. I was just going to say I'd have a hard time not going with the running back in this case. So I'd go probably Bucky Irving. I don't think the Buccaneers can keep giving him workloads this big forever. Like he had 120+ carry game at Oregon last year, and he went over that in one game last week. So we'll see how that goes. But as long as the Buccaneers are using him like that, I'd probably want him active.
Yeah, and he's going against the Raiders. Yeah, I think that's the play. I would just kind of think about your tight end spot long and hard, because leaving Jonnu on your bench at this stage also feels icky.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Like, as much as we love Khalil Shakir, I think it's easier to have a, good looking starting lineup without him than it is guys like Bucky Irving and Jonnu Smith at this stage of the season. Before we get on over to our next game, we got a message from our pals over at Circa. The end of the season is getting closer, sad, but you can catch the big game poolside at Circa Stadium, swim at Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. 6 temperature-controlled pools, a massive 143-foot screen, and booming game sound, plus the view of the pyrotechnics and visual effects throughout the game. Grab the best seat in the sun with day beds, poolside boxes, cabanas, and more. Stadium Swim's big game viewing party is February 9th, only at Circa Resort and Casino. Space is going fast. Reserve your spot today at circalasvegas.com. Also got a message from our friends over at Live Golf. How about that? A new season of Live Golf Fantasy is coming in 2025. New prizes, new ways to win, and more are coming in the new season. Get ready to play and sign up now at fantasy.livegolf.com. We also got a final message from our friends over at Blue Wire. Our live streamers don't have to hear that. We're going to keep the show rolling. All right, we've got the Browns and the Steelers. Steelers 6.5-point favorites at home in this one. Obviously, the Browns beat the Steelers last time out just a couple of short weeks ago in the snow. Steelers, I don't think the offense looks quite, the way that it did last week against the Bengals, but I do like the Steelers in this spot.
Yeah, they got to show up and take care of business, but after losing the last matchup with the Browns the way they did, I'm sure Tomlin is going to make a bit of a revenge theme out of it. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to watch the latest Hard Knocks, the in-season one, which is apparently about the entire AFC North, but some interesting stuff. You could probably learn some ball watching the way Tomlin approaches things and talks about things. But the Browns, as long as they have Winston doing the exact replay of that one ridiculous Tampa Bay offense, we're just throwing it 48 times, and the deal is we're getting something like 300, 350 yards, and there's going to be 3 turnovers and 3 touchdowns, and we're going to lose by 15, but we're going to keep throwing it. Winston's going to keep them sort of scoring points, but the question, I guess, is like, does his turnover rate get high enough that it lets the Steelers just slam the door on them? And I think it probably will. I know the turnovers got going last week against the Broncos, but I think they stay going in this one while the Steelers sort of clean up the aspects of play that they screwed up with the first time around.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is such a quick turnaround, not needing to have the long memory for Tomlin to know what to do to fix it. I think, Nick Whalen was bringing up the good point. I don't think that the Steelers will deploy the same let Jerry Jeudy get wide open defense that the Broncos rolled out there on.
Levi Wallace, man, leaving that guy without. Anyway, that was a crazy way to approach. Vance Joseph is great, but that was a weird one.
Levi, who I guess Jerry Jeudy and Levi Wallace would have practiced against each other at Alabama way back when. So
yeah, and Levi Wallace used to be the guy who got beat all the time for the Steelers.
That's right. And then the Bills before that, a little bit of a journeyman at this stage. Yeah. So
safe to say, though, that Winston won't find, even if Tillman is back, it's like this is going to be a tougher game. The Denver defense was not in good shape in that one.
No, and apologies for any barking coming through. I think something is interesting to my dog out in the living room, but we press forward. Lastly, we got an interesting question about Sam Laporta, kind of a big central theme of our chat today, or David Njoku playing in this game, getting tons of targets lately. Your thoughts there?
I can't fault anyone for preferring Njoku, and I think if you're starting Njoku, you like your chances right now just because he's a really good player, or I think it's clear that he's a good player despite his 5.4 yards per target on the year. It's just everything that's gone wrong with the Browns' offense this year has fallen hard on the run game and Njoku. So Jerry Jeudy getting going a bit, Jameis Winston getting going a bit. That's definitely going to carry Njoku because he's just really good. And yeah, the target rate pretty crazy. That's going to come down, of course, but the efficiency will go up when it does.
Yeah, so I'm loving what I'm seeing out of Njoku lately. I mean, it's literally just like last year, right? Where Watson goes down and the offense perks up, and Njoku, who's kind of sandbagging you in the first half of the season, ends up being like a league-winning type of pick. I'm definitely having some FOMO because I stupidly drafted under the suspicion that Watson would be the quarterback for the whole year. I should have known this was coming, and that guys like Jeudy and Njoku would ultimately be the guys on all these winning teams. Let's go Raiders, Buccaneers. We got the Bucs sitting as 6.5-point favorites. We just talked about a little bit with this Mike Evans injury detail. Let's unpack it a little bit further. What does that do to this Buccaneers offense if he's sidelined once again?
It takes away their only vertical or sideline in general target threat. So Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator, has done a really good job of repackaging the Buccaneers offense as needed, depending on which skill position players were hurt in a given week. I expect this will be just more of the same. So it's not, it of course would be bad for the Buccaneers if Evans can't play, and it kind of looks less than great at the moment, but only in the sense that, if Evans was playing, the spread would be 8 instead of 7. That's how much it hurts them. It's still a game they should win by at least 1 score, I think, because the Buccaneers have shown the ability to run from various looks and even repackage the passing game through the backfield to some extent. So at the very least, Evans being out makes you suspect this is a bounce back game for Otten. It should be, but the Buccaneers can kind of just run their way to winning this one, I think, at least given how bad the Vegas offense is.
So let's talk about the Vegas offense, because I think some people might have some false sense of hope about this unit, and obviously the Buccaneers are a bad defense, but I'm not. Other than Brock Bowers, I'm not taking anything for granted, and Jacoby Myers to a lesser extent. I'm not taking really anything for granted.
Those two you can take for borderline granted, I think, and that's just because even though Trey Tucker made that good play, that touchdown against was it like Najee Johnson or something like that, that was just the Chiefs defense kind of failing. I mean, Tucker ran in a straight line. He's not a guarantee to catch that pass every time. O'Connell certainly isn't a guarantee to put it on the spot like he did there. So if someone's asking the question, would the Raiders offensive last week be good if it kept happening? It's like, sure. But the evidence that offense will occur again is sparse at best. It's just Bowers and Myers, and the backfield, I guess Abdullah or something, but generally just Bowers and Myers, because Tucker, DJ Turner, they can't draw targets.
No, Tucker speedy, but that's about where it ends. I do think that great spot for Myers and Bowers, but and I suppose if you're really pinched in a super flex format, that O'Connell could be startable this week, but that's about as far as I'd go with it.
Yeah, he, I guess to be fair, should have some pass attempts. It's just the idea of a clean game from O'Connell, I wouldn't get my hopes up for. Like, I'm not expecting, if he throws 40 passes, I'm expecting like less than 250 yards this time.
Yeah, and it was funny. The end of last week's game, I had to follow it from the Metro, and I see that they have 16 seconds left. And I'm like, well, if they kick now, that's still too much time for Mahomes, but it really feels like they're pressing their luck if they run another play. And then I just, on the sleeper app, I'm looking and it's like in play, and like all the reacts are just like crying emojis. And I'm just like, what possibly could have happened there? And it was even more nuts than I possibly could have fathomed.
It was in a way what you knew was going to happen, but the way it happened was dumber than you could have guessed. But you paradoxically did know for certain that it was going to happen.
Something dumb's coming. Yeah, it's
probably gonna drop the snap. I don't know. Oh yeah, he dropped the snap. Okay, well, there we go. All right.
Yeah, it's just like everyone in Sector 7G like piled in watching Homer, and it's like, just wait, he's gonna do something really stupid, and there it is. Speaking of really stupid, we got the Jaguars and the Titans. Ooh, mama. You wanna? Well, there is an interesting element here. People are talking about it, and mostly because there are so many teams on bye this week. But where's Nick Westbrook-Akina in your sort of general?
All right. Yeah, I was making such a big deal about Marquez Valdes-Scantling's ridiculous season when Westbrook-Akina is doing an even more epic version of the same thing. Yeah, how could I possibly tell someone to bench the receiver who has a touchdown in 7 of the last 8 games? I don't want to say that. I'm scared to even say bench Valdes-Scantling at this point. So obviously Westbrook-Akina is just he's like this. He's some kind of godly like presence at this point. Eternal, timeless, and I don't think we should doubt him at this point. There might be something naturally wrong about doubting him, especially against the Jags, because he's gonna if he avoids Tyson Campbell, then yeah. But even if it's Tyson Campbell, I guess Westbrook-Akina has mastered the art of that kind of just one-on-one, not open, catches it anyway kind of target down the field. So why not just keep it rolling?
And to all the smarties out there that are screaming touchdown regression, and you can't possibly catch a touchdown. It's like, sorry, rule doesn't apply here, pal. The sample size is too small. It's just gonna keep happening, and it's gonna be great. And I will say, I'm glad that this is happening. Nick Westbrook, when he was just Nick Westbrook, back at Indiana, shout out Hoosiers. He was awesome.
Devy people. He was once a high Devy pick.
Yeah, and look at it now.
And they were right.
You just got to play the long game on Nick Westbrook-Akine, and it's going to pan out, and it really has. Beyond that, what are we looking at on the Jaguars side of the ledger now that we know it's going to be Mac Jones?
There's some interest out there in Parker Washington, which is certainly understandable. Seems like he's a decent player, had a good game last week. But the thing that concerns me about Parker Washington is that he's very slow. And the Jaguars last week and up to this point in general have had him lining up on the boundary rather than in the slot. I think it would be better for Washington if he were in the slot. So I can't fault anyone for chasing kind of, especially because Washington was such a good player at Penn State. I can understand why someone who's familiar with him would think, yeah, he's good. He very well might be. I just think that right now he's playing a position that doesn't suit him that well. And even against kind of a bum secondary like the Bengals, I'm not taking a whole lot, the Titans, I'm not taking a whole lot for granted there. But if Chidobe Awuzie is out again, that would be helpful because then it means the Titans are starting that rookie Brownlee, the 5th round pick from Louisville, along with, I think, Darrell Baker, if I remember right. And he's kind of just a practice squad guy.
Yeah. So you don't want to be rolling him out there. Although if you absolutely had to at home against Mac Jones, could be worse.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Who cares?
Indeed. All right, let's hit Cardinals Seahawks. We've got the Cardinals as 2.5-point favorites at home. These two teams played an absolute rock fight just a couple of weeks ago when the over-under was at like 50. I chased that. My DFS lineups went up in smoke. I thought I was so smart. I was so dumb, but that's usually the case for me in DFS. Oh, well. But what are we looking at here? And we do have a question in the chat as it pertains to one James Conner. Do you like him or do you like Kyren Williams against the Bills defense this week?
I don't know. I guess I'd probably go with Kyren Williams just because I think his job is a lot easier than James Conner's. And right or wrong, I kind of am starting to respect the Seahawks defense a little bit. Maybe that's foolish, but we've seen enough games this year where Conner kind of gets frozen out of the game plan because the first few drives, the run game doesn't get going for the Cardinals. And since they don't have a passing game farther than 10 yards downfield, they can't really create space, for the running game if there's no space to be had either way. So there's games where Conner kind of gets frozen out, but Kyren Williams apparently just doesn't matter how many times he fumbles. Sean McVay will not put him on the bench. I know that Corum played a little bit last week, but that was, the game. Not that it was zipped up that early, but it was like the Saints are not a threatening opponent. And they probably put Corum on the field because McVay determined it's safe to do it. Normally McVay is sort of very attached to his running back one, though.
Yeah, for me, this one's tricky because I could see both of these guys having bad games. Unfortunately, like we have Kyren ranked pretty high, but I mean, if the Bills smash the Rams, yeah, I guess there's some garbage time targets to be had for Kyren Williams, but it's going to be kind of a...
John, sorry, not to push back on your point, because if as stated, it's definitely correct. The one weird thing about Kyren Williams, and this is kind of me just being a hater, arguably, they give him tons of carries from looks like 2nd and 15. I've never seen anything like it. They love giving him, like after penalties, they love giving Kyren Williams carries when the defense has like 4 guys in the box. So he has a weird way of just staying involved no matter what, and if they fall behind, I kind of think McVay gets that much more clingy because it's probably pass protection, especially that he's so particular about. But sure. Anyway, yeah, you're not going to hear me argue for Kyren on a talent basis. Don't misunderstand me.
No, never. But I don't have any Kyren in season long. I do have Conner in a lot of places, and if not for the bye week landscape this week, I would be a little bit worried about starting him.
I'd play Kyren over him, I think, though.
Yeah,
even with all that.
Yeah,
stuff.
I think he projects a bit better. I also think Trey McBride, first touchdown of the season this week. Why not?
His annual touchdown is about to happen.
Get excited, get your popcorn. It's gonna be.
He did that at Colorado State too. It's actually a thing he does. I don't get it.
Yeah, he had like
110 catches and 1 touchdown. He did the Keyshawn Johnson.
Remarkable stuff. It was the only thing that made Colorado State watchable that particular season. Let's go to that Rams-Bills game.
Well, I think the Bills are pretty clearly the better team. McVay is wily, though, and so is Matt Stafford. Those receivers, if they kind of go nuts, the numbers speak for itself. A quarterback who's pushing for 400 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns is on a team that has a good chance of winning, and Stafford is capable of that sometimes. I think the problem for the Rams, though, is they face a Bills defense that's largely built to stop an offense like the Rams. I think to hurt the Bills defense, you would ideally have speed on the boundary, down the seam, everywhere, to make guys like Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford, who are both big corners who are not particularly fast, they kind of got heavy feet. You want them to have to move those heavy feet as much as possible. You want them to change direction. You want them to stop and start. You want to make them exert top speed. You want to make them have to move around because that's not what they're best at. They're best at crashing downward and jumping your routes. They're specifically timed. They designed the assumed pass rush and the coverage combos so that guys like Rasul Douglas can jump on your receiver at a certain point in the pass play. And if they're allowed to do that, they're very effective. So the Rams, they're an offense that by design fits right into that range where the Bills are designed to stop. Those 8-9 yard right at the sticks kind of throws to Kupp and Puka Nacua, where it's designed and often gets 5-6 yards after the catch. Those plays are plays where the Bills are incidentally hovering in those same places anyway. Like if they change nothing about their strategy, they would incidentally be hovering where the Rams tend to break their route stems. So I feel like McDermott could be kind of challenging for Stafford in this one. And don't get me wrong, if it came down to just a straight up shootout, I would still take the Bills. But I think the Bills can kind of take care of the Rams here.
I do too. I actually placed a future on the Bills winning the Super Bowl earlier this week on my way out of town when I was in a state with legal gambling. I think they kind of look the part. I don't know. I'm officially terrified of them. And I think by that extension, I do think that they can beat the Rams even on the road.
Yeah,
there it is. All right, Bears, Niners. It scares me how much I like the Bears in this spot. I think
that's the wrong word. You never like the Bears. There's some other word we have to come up with. But yeah,
it scares me how much I don't hate the Bears this week.
Okay.
I guess would be the best way to go about it. I just think that this season from hell for the 49ers, it doesn't really get better from here. I think it just continues to kind of fall apart. I think the Bears, I'm not even saying that I'm factoring in this huge, the weight of Matt Eberflus is off everybody's shoulders, but you can't discount that. I mean, if you or someone to put stock in that kind of stuff, like the Bears would be kind of the one, given how long it's been. I mean, other than like the Jaguars, I guess with Doug Peterson, they don't have anyone to really see that through. But so I think the Bears will be feeling good coming into this one, and I think over the last few weeks they've had those close losses against competitive good teams for the most part. The offense has been, I did a little digging, averaging like 360 yards per game over the last 3. It was a little bit a little bit over 300 against the Lions, but that's still the Lions on the road. So I think this offense is clicking a little bit here. The defense has been not as good as we expected, but I do think that the Niners are just kind of lacking the personnel to make the Bears hurt for it.
Right. We'll see what happens with, I guess we'll see anyway, what happens with Trent Williams and Nick Bosa. If Bosa's out, then that's a big one for Caleb Williams, obviously, because we might want to assume that Williams needs an extra second or two to get the look that he wants, especially with the Bears at best being an ongoing, salvaging project of Thomas Brown, rather than something that could just be switched back on. This is a team that needs a lot of work, and they need all the help they can get. Bosa being out opens up the scenarios helps open up a little wider the possibility of scenarios where Williams is scrambling around and somebody gets open down the field, even if they weren't initially open. He needs plays like that at this point, because he can't play, or this ituration of the Bears offense can't run on a schedule such that you would be able to budget, project, 8-yard slants, 3-step drop for a nice clean throw and catch. That will never happen with this team. Like, it's always got to be complicated. So Bosa helps, but if Bosa being out would help, but if Bosa's in, I think that's honestly enough for him. Like, no, Williams, he's going to get caught before, he has enough time to dance around for somebody to get open. And meanwhile, I think the Bears' run defense can be had, especially if Shanahan's all locked in, wanting somebody to pay about the way the season has gone. I'm not going to be the person to tell you to slow down the Guerrero hype. I won't do it. I refuse to do it.
Okay. Yes.
If they put a Anaconda out there, I'd be a little more surprised, but I think he's good too. I don't think anyone will look at the Jets personnel moves of these years and go like, oh, that's should have done it like them, So them getting rid of a Anaconda doesn't mean anything at all to me. And Guerrero and Anaconda are both raw, but that's kind of all the more reason for the 49ers to strip down the offense and go with a run heavy game so that they don't make those two pass block. But they can run, they're fast, and it's hard to catch them when they get some space, and Shanahan's good at creating space. So I see no reason to be worried for Guerrero here.
So if you did have your proverbial fab budget for this week, how much would you have put on it out of 100?
Oh, at this point, everything, whatever it is that I have left. I mean, what's the point holding on to it?
No, I tried and failed pretty much everywhere. I'm pretty much out of fab in all my leagues that do it that way. But yeah, I wish I had some more Guerrero, and I didn't really.
Real heads have had him on their bench the entire year, as they may or may not be in playoff range.
I noticed someone in my league, he was already picked up, and it's like, you are a psycho, my man. But more power to you. But yeah, I think that this will be something where those who were able to scoop him will be rewarded, especially on a week such as this. But even with your logic and smart analysis there, give me the Bears. I don't know. The 49ers are just they're just creating pain for themselves in new and interesting ways constantly. Let's go Chiefs Chargers. Can the Chiefs keep getting away with it?
Yes. I think it's clear that they are in Satan's embrace and benefiting in all the according ways that one does after a soul transaction. They're rolling in it. What can you say? They're trying to lose games but can't. That's what they've been doing. It might not be obvious, but the Chiefs have actually been saying, like, let's see if this works, just for fun, just because it doesn't matter. And they can't. They tried and they couldn't lose. The Raiders, they dropped the snap. Whatever way the Chargers need to have theirs, dropped snap in this game, whatever play structure it occurs from, it probably will. But I don't know. I guess it'll be a little lower scoring than it usually is, something like that. Oh, not last week. There was a low scoring game against the Raiders, but I will say the game will be higher scoring than that. We're going to get into the 20s, I think.
Thank God. I mean, a standalone game where it's just.
I hope the Chargers win, though. That would just be funny to see this Harbaugh bit about having a top 5 defense no matter who is playing for it. That's an interesting bit, and I think it'd be funny if it kept going here, especially at the Chiefs' expense.
Yeah, if I didn't know the things that you outlined about the Chiefs and their deal with the devil, then I would pick the Chargers here. But knowing that, it makes it a little bit trickier. But still, I'm just going to recklessly.
Deities are intimidating here. I think it's fair. Yeah,
they are. Let's finish it out. We got the Bengals and the Cowboys. Bengals 5.5 point favorites on the road. most important question here. Will you be watching the Simpsons broadcast of this?
Probably not. It isn't going to be like basically the modern day Simpsons. It's not going to be
That is my concern.
Season 11 broadcast. That's yeah. It's interesting. I wish them luck, but I haven't followed the Simpsons in a while. The Bengals should be able to torch Dallas here because they're several degrees past, of course, the must-win kind of category. They're sort of they're post-desperation at this point. Like their odds are slim, but they know to the extent that there exists a path, they need to just torch their way through it. And so the motive is there. I think the ability is there. They have to, of course, deal with Micah Parsons, and certainly that can be easier said than done at times. But this one time, I feel like Cincinnati should be able to just kind of lock in, feed their big playmakers urgently and sort of just outrace Dallas quickly in this game. And if Dallas finds a way to punch back, it could be a full-blown, Burrow, Chase, Higgins, everybody goes crazy kind of game, because I think the Bengals can basically take what they want here, and it's up to Dallas to kind of make them see how serious of a game it is.
So with the Bengals defense being as bad as it is, I think we're in agreement that the Bengals are going to be able to kind of name their score here. But is there, some junk production to be had here from this Cowboys offense? And if so, where's it coming from?
There could be just straight up, real production to be had. CeeDee Lamb against any of those corners has a big advantage. I think Cam Taylor-Britt is still a good corner. He's had a weird, difficult season. I think he's good. Josh Newton on the other side, not as convinced. Seems more like a backup type. So guy like Jalen Tolbert, Brandon Cooks, whoever can probably beat a corner like that. But predicting whether or when guys like the Tolbert Cookses get their usage, that's really tough, because it's only Lamb and Ferguson you can really take for granted. And I guess even Ferguson, I don't know if him coming back from this injury maybe opens the door for Schoonmaker to do more of a rotation than they normally would. I don't know. So Lamb and somebody is going to produce among the pass catchers, but I have no idea who. I guess I would say Ferguson, but it's like with less confidence than usual. And Rico Dowdle should be productive against the Bengals run defense, but I wouldn't take it for granted the way that I would against the Giants or some other blowout where Dallas is on the winning side of it. That won't be this game.
Last detail I have for you and the listeners on this one. According to our RotoWire rankings, Cooper Rush, QB 13 this week. So fringe startable in regular mainstream leagues.
Could do worse. I will say it's best to not endeavor to have Cooper Rush in your lineup, but he's doing teach tape for the aspiring backups out there, like how to be a real pro and keep the boat from rocking too much as it otherwise sinks, and for sure.
It's something else, but he's right in that mix. It's kind of wild, but I think there's a level of like daredevil risk taking that sometimes maybe like a fantasy manager that's on the fringe of making the playoffs or safely in the playoffs could afford a loss. And it's like, I want to see what it feels like to rely on Cooper Rush on Monday Night Football.
By all means, see to your entertainment first. Like if you're doing everything by the math books or whatever, but you're bored and you're thinking this sucks, it's like just shed that approach and just wild out. Go where the vibes lead you. Don't ask why or where it's taking you. Just go.
Yeah. Listen to the vibe. That's going to do it for us here. And that's a good message to leave out on for this week of the Week 14 Fantasy Football Preview Show over here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast Network. Big thanks to our sponsors over at DraftKings Pick 6, over at Circa, our friends over at Live, and of course the Blue Wire Network. And of course, also, I'm saying of course too much, to our live listeners who chimed in with great questions throughout the show today. If you are listening to this and you are not subscribed to RotoWire, be sure to check out our free trial, no strings attached, rotowire.com/pod. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.